Hey guys, it's Kirsten, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of a content warning before you listen to this episode. In this podcast, I speak with a dear friend of mine who is a youth crimes detective, and we worked together for years. We're going to talk about some sensitive topics regarding child-related crimes, including sexual assault. This discussion is from a police perspective, and our aim is to educate our listeners on how best to protect your children from these predators. However, the content may be a bit distressing for some, and at the end of the day, we decided to do it because it's just too important not to share. But if you or someone you love is in danger, call 911 and get the help that you need, and they can direct you to the best avenue to help you with your situation.
Hey guys, Kirsten here with the Overmatch podcast. Thank you for joining me today. We have a very special guest, Jess Hall from the police department I used to work for, and we're going to be talking about all child safety and how to keep our kids safe in this crazy world. So without further ado, thank you, Jess, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So just to give everybody a little background on who you are and what you've done, go for it.
So I have been with the police department going 10 and a half years now. Started out in patrol and did that for 5 years before I switched over to crimes against children, where I did investigations involving children 15 years and younger who had been either physically or sexually abused. So my primary job with that was interviewing the suspects accused of hurting the children and building a case to later take it to prosecution. Did that for 5 years and then moved over to homicide for a brief stint. And then I am currently in recruiting now. So I recruit for the police department.
Of all the jobs you've done, what was your favorite?
Ooh, it's hard. So I'd say my favorite was crimes against children because it was so rewarding. But the most fun I've had, that I definitely want to get back into eventually, is homicide.
Is it the investigative aspect, or what is it that's so fun for you?
The variety. So you would go to any suspicious death, working with different agencies. So you get to work with the crime scene agent or the crime scene department that we have in-house, but all just brainstorming with different detectives, really putting the puzzle pieces together to figure out, you have the body here, you have the crime scene tells you you can tell you the story of what happened, but then the why, that always intrigues me as to the why. So
Yeah. Well, awesome. Obviously, you've had a lot of knowledge about the detective aspect, and you worked with these kiddos for a long time. Jess would sign the warrants on these guys, and then the unit that I was on would go and catch them, and it was a blast working with you. And I loved your cases because there was no doubt in my mind that all the T's were crossed, all the I's dotted, and this guy deserved to get picked up. So, tell me about, you said 15 and younger were
Correct.
all those cases involving children, essentially, regardless of what kind of crime.
Correct. Well, yeah, physical abuse, if it's, felony neglect or sexual assault.
If a homicide happened involving a kid, would you be involved at all, or did that go straight to homicide?
No, if the child
Or
died,
runaways, kidnappings, because I know we have missing persons too. So
we do. Yeah, a lot of times because we are experts in our field, especially with crimes against children, our expertise is juveniles. So a lot of times missing persons would have the lead on the case, but then would refer to us. And same for homicide, because we do have really close connections in crimes against children with Department of Social Services. We work very closely with them, the Child Advocacy Center. So a lot of times we would work together as a team on that. But no, if a child died before police were called, it would just go to homicide. Yeah.
So with your work in youth crimes, what drew you to that? Because that is a tough job, and a lot of cops will never even touch that with a 6-foot pole because it's just so difficult, because they're so innocent, and it's true evil what you see on that side of the fence. What drew you to it?
So honestly, I really believe it was like divine intervention. I always say I always felt led or called to this position. Even as a child, I would stick up for people who couldn't speak for themselves, or if I'd see a kid sitting by themselves, I would always make it a point to include them I never wanted kids to feel left out. And so when I was growing up, I was about middle school, I picked up this book. It was actually a trilogy. It's an autobiography by a guy named David Pelzer. And he wrote his story about himself and the abuse that he endured by his mother. And it involved physical and sexual abuse. And so the books are called, a child called it The Lost Boy and a Man Named Dave. And I couldn't get enough of it. And I remember coming home and my mom being mortified that she saw me reading this and she thought I was going to be traumatized and scarred. And
Right.
I can't believe this happens to kids. I want to protect kids. So when I grew up and was thinking about what am I going to do, I was really led towards social work. But I found the police department, got connected, and then the more calls I took involving juveniles or child abuse cases, I was like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it's just this passion I've had since I was little. I can't really explain where it started from, but just speaking up for others and protecting kids who can't protect themselves.
That's awesome. Did you see a change in how you saw cases and stuff when you became a mom?
The physical abuse cases I did, and honestly, I feel like I could relate more to the suspects after I had a kid, right? Because a lot of times, especially with the shaken baby, or if you get a child with a skull fracture or hematoma, like bleeding on the brain, anything like that, a lot of it involves shaking a baby because you can't get them to be quiet. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, why wouldn't you just put them down, just walk away, put them in a crib? But after I had a child, I could understand. Like I could sympathize with people, but it wasn't until I had a child of my own where I really understood what that feeling is like, of just that anger kind of boiling up. But the difference is I have the education of knowing better. I know what to do. I have proper coping skills, whereas these people didn't. And so a lot of times it's, 16, 17-year-old kids or people who didn't even want to have kids that find themselves in the situation, and they would shake their baby or hurt their baby just to get them to be quiet. And I think it helped me tremendously in my interviews because I could sit across from that person who hurt this child and actually empathize with them. Like, I get what
Yeah.
you're going through. Doesn't make it right, but I could understand it. I
Right.
think instead of, having a detective come in there and judge you and pick you to pieces and call you all these, just make you feel terrible about what you did. I truly believe, I think that, people make horrible, horrible decisions, bad mistakes. I don't think I use it sparingly. Like I believe there's evil. I've sat across from evil, truly, true evil. But for the majority of these people with the physical abuse, you've made a bad choice. I don't think you're a bad person. So I think really getting there in there and understanding why people do what they do. But at the end of the day, right, my goal is to get that confession and to prosecute them and make sure that no child is ever hurt again, or that child.
Right.
And I found so much satisfaction in that because I knew that at the end of the day, the child was going to be safe, that we had a safety plan in place, and there was a team of providers that were coming together to make sure that this kid was going to be in a good situation moving forward.
Yeah, and the key to a good interviewer is someone who can connect and have that dialogue and not necessarily befriend, but be like, hey, I get it,
Yeah.
and so that again, that doesn't make anything right. That doesn't make anything okay. Like,
No,
you don't have an excuse to hurt a child. If you
no,
don't have that kind of coping mechanism, you need to find it or get the help to
correct.
find it. But that certainly, I mean, it's rough when your kid's screaming all night, you've had no sleep. But
Yes. Yeah. So after
um
having I could, I guess have that rapport with these people. And then it also gives you an opportunity to like, speak into that person sitting across the table from you. Um,
mhm.
Because they genuinely don't understand. Like, some people think it's okay to leave their kids in a bathtub unattended, if they're 2 and under. And I'm just like,
Or in
oh,
their
oh my,
car while they
yes,
go
or
inside the store and shop for
while they're
hours.
exactly. So, and it's just, to us, it's mind boggling. But then you look at the majority of just normal folks, they just don't have that education or understanding of what could go wrong. We see it every day. So it's our reality of the worst
Mhm.
case scenarios. But to normal everyday citizens, they don't see the the dangers or what could happen.
So on that note, what is the biggest mistakes you've seen parents do over the years? What are some things that you can point out, some direct links to, future pain or whatever that parents can be aware of now and hopefully either mitigate it or completely avoid the trauma altogether or their kid being in a bad situation, etc.
Yeah. So we can kind of break it up in several different topics. So let's just start with body safety. So for teaching our kids body safety on, you know, good touches and bad touches. So just starting the conversation off simple, teaching our kids their private parts and using the anatomically correct terms. Because I've seen in cases where you get a 2 or 3-year-old that comes in to disclose that she's been, sexually assaulted. And then she's using words that none of us understand. We've never heard it before. It could mean a plethora of things, but she doesn't have a name for her private parts. So teaching kids that anywhere that a bathing suit covers is their private part and that no adult should ever touch it, that their body is their own, and in situations, right? We're going to a doctor's office. It's okay for a doctor to look there. Mommy and daddy needs to check or help you bathe. That's okay.
But even with that, they should be looking there while mommy or daddy's in the room with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And absolutely. And so teaching our kids that they have autonomy over their own bodies and that their bodies are their own, that it's okay for them to say, no, you cannot touch me there.
Yeah. And let me jump in because I know a lot of moms that I know, or even parents, they feel like vagina and penis, that is a dirty word. And it sounds dirty and it makes us kind of feel dirty because it's not what we say in society to be polite and whatever. But the reality is that they need to understand that that specific area is that piece of anatomy because if, God forbid, anything ever happens, they need to be able to explain exactly where they were touched or how they were touched and where specifically, because obviously, we think in terms of a detective and there are elements that have to be met of a crime for a crime to have occurred. And these elements are things that it matters what part of the anatomy it is even. And being able to 100% determine like, well, no, she said vagina. Like there's no question, right? Instead of maybe cookie or what else have I heard? I hear really weird things. But like my daughter, she's 2. And I explained to her very clearly, that is your vagina. That is your butt. That is your butthole. I mean, it sounds silly talking about, but it really is important to call those things exactly what they are.
Yes, it's absolutely huge. And just having the opening that conversation with the kids are little because then it won't make it as awkward, right? When we have to have conversations about sex later. Because you have to, us as parents have to understand that we are the primary educators of our own children, that if we don't teach our kids these things, someone else will, whether that's social media, right? Kids at school, whatnot, or predators. Someone's going to teach your kid about these things.
Well, and even that, if someone shows them they're inappropriate, like, that happens a lot. How many times have you taken reports where someone exposed themselves? Now your daughter or son can be like, no, I saw his penis, and that's as clear as day. There's no other questions that need to be asked.
No, absolutely not. So that's my biggest advice for parents when it comes to body safety is just start opening that conversation, teaching your kids the correct terminology and teaching them that it's okay to say no to people. Like if your son doesn't want to give a stranger a hug, like I'll tell my son when we go to church, oh, come on, you've seen this person a bunch, give him a hug. He doesn't want to, I am not going to force him to because there's something about that he doesn't feel comfortable doing that. Don't force your kids because we're teaching them, I was always taught growing up, you respect authority, you do as you're told. But if people creep you out, you can say no. You do not have to be nice to people that creep you out.
Yeah. And that's something that's God-given, that's intuition. There is something inside of us that we are picking up on that we may not be able to consciously be aware of as to the why, but it's there for a reason and we need to listen to it. And. And, oftentimes, because of the way that you and I grew up, where you respect authority, if
Yep.
you don't feel like giving a hug, you still give one because you don't want the person to feel bad. Like we
Exactly.
should not be caring about an adult's emotions when we are a little kid. If there is something that makes us uncomfortable, we need to make sure that our kids, we are always the safe place where they can come and tell us if they feel threatened, if they feel uncomfortable, because if they don't tell us, they may not be telling anybody.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And that gets a beautiful transition into teaching our kids confidence, right? We need to establish who safe people are. If it's not you as mom or dad, but they need to have safe people in their lives, safe adults that they can talk to. Because, especially even if the abuser is in the home, they may not have someone safe in the home to talk to. But if they're going to
Right.
school or, summer group or whatnot, church, just establishing a safe person for that child to talk to.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably one of the best things a kid can have,
Yeah.
because, a kid can't, and specifically, we're really focusing on younger kids. They're not going to be able to
Yes.
physically defend themselves. The adult may use bribery or like uncomfortable threats where, don't tell mom or I'm going to hurt you or her or something. And, how about that? How often did you see secrets between the
Yes.
perpetrator and the child play a significant role um, in them actually telling that something was
Yeah.
going on? And how can parents and kids combat that?
Yeah. So I would say the majority of our cases, it involved the perpetrator saying, do not tell anybody, because that's one of their biggest tactics, right? They're going to start off slow and give a kid, let's say, a piece of candy and say, don't tell mommy I gave you this, and see if the kid can do that. If the kid can keep that secret, then they're going to compound on that and keep working. And then, hey, I'll get you this if you don't tell, and they use that tactic a lot, or the threat of hurting a family member. So in my household, I always tell my son, we don't have secrets in our house. There are no secrets. We only have surprises. And so in that, I tell him it's okay. If daddy doesn't want to tell me something, or if you have a birthday present for me, right? It's not a secret. It's a surprise, because eventually I'm going to know about it. So that's how I teach my son. And I tell him that we have no secrets. So
That's great.
if, yeah, because I've seen it too often where kids are scared to tell on somebody else because it's a secret. No, we don't have secrets in this household, and it's okay. And that goes back to what you said. We should not be protecting or caring about adults' feelings. That is
Mm-hmm.
not a child's responsibility. So building confidence in our kids and telling them that it's okay. Hey, you don't have to do that. Just starting that conversation, because it's detrimental. It keeps so many kids from telling until they feel like they're in a safe place or have a safe person to talk to.
Another important thing is teaching our kids who is safe if we aren't
Yes.
there, and maybe, I don't know, they got lost and now they don't have whoever the guardian was.
Yep.
Things like uniformed officers or teachers or a mom with other kids who, uh, that would be, of all the options, I would
Yes.
probably choose a mom with kids versus, just a solo guy, and teaching them
Correct.
things like that so that if we aren't there, that they have an option of trying to find some.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think finding a mom with kids is a much safer option than just a solo male adult. And it's sad to say, like, there's great guys out there, but
Right.
more than likely, right, I would say a mom
Yeah.
with kids is your best bet.
And yeah, and this isn't a hit on men because, like you said,
No.
great men. And most people
Yeah.
are going to be decent and want to help a kid. But
Yeah.
you've got to take your best chance of the chances, and same if it was a solo female versus a mom with
Yes.
kids, I'm still going to choose the mom with kids because it's
Yes.
just more likely that one, they're going to be able to help, want to help, and probably know what to do because they're already a mom.
Yes, absolutely. One thing too, if our kids do get lost, we're talking about younger kids again. You can have, I would see a lot of times with people who would go missing, especially the older people with dementia, they would have name tags like in their, the back of their shirt with a phone number or something. You can get tape
Mm,
or, I don't know, like adhesive things you can iron on in the back with, a phone number to call.
yes.
But teaching your kids to know their address, or phone number, we can
Phone
practice
number,
phone numbers.
yes.
Kids are sponges and they can pick up so many things. But my son, we practice, so what's mommy's name? Mommy. What's my other name? He goes, Jessica. Okay, what's my last name? Hall. And we'll practice those things so he knows who different people are. Because if he does come
So
into
smart.
contact with a police, he'll know, yes, my mommy's name is Jessica Hall. And I don't know. He's only 4, but starting that and repeating it, consistency
Yeah,
is huge.
that can make a huge difference. And I've also seen uh like cards where you write all the important information for the kid. So if you're like at an amusement park or something,
Yeah.
you can actually put a backpack on them and clip it on. So you have that information in there in case, God forbid, you get separated, as
Yeah.
well as having a photo. Like if you guys go anywhere that's a
Mm-hmm.
bigger deal, like an amusement park, a zoo, whatever, I would highly suggest taking a photo of your kid that day and what
Yeah.
they're wearing. So it's an updated picture, because as you and I know, that's one of the biggest things that we need if a kid does go missing or gets lost. And the
Yes.
more information you have for how they look right now,
Yeah.
that only helps first responders.
Tremendously helps. Yes, it does.
Also, I've heard like when you're looking for your kid, if you lose them in a store or something like that, you
Mhm.
start yelling what they're wearing. So now everyone's not necessarily looking for, Johnny,
Yeah. Yes.
but they're looking for the kid in the blue shirt with red shorts.
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
interested if anybody's ever used that. If you guys have, put it in the messages, because I'd love to see. Because I've never seen that in real life. But I'd love to know how helpful it is.
No, I haven't either. But one huge thing, I live my life by these, I call them the 7 Ps, but the proper prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And that's just kind of
Yes.
been my motto. But proper prior planning, and it's like we talked about before, not fear mongering, not, being scared of everything, but just having a plan in place of, hey, if we go here, what are the dangers that could happen, or what's the reality, and planning it accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
So let's take a hard right and talk
Okay.
about online stuff, because obviously that's a huge part of life now. You and I didn't even have phones when we were kids.
No, no.
There wasn't even, like, we had video games, but that was like you weren't even
Yeah.
connected online like they are now.
Nope.
And there's so many aspects and different places where a kid can be targeted. And
Yes.
it doesn't even have to be a cell phone or a computer. It can be video games and different aspects, iPads and things like that. So
Mhm.
what have you seen that, one, in your opinion, and what you've done, is the technology worth it? And if so, what are the pros to the technology? Because obviously
Um,
there's tools that we have that have helped us find people that technology has
yeah.
brought. And then what are the negatives, and what should we steer away from?
Yeah. Great question. So I'm torn on the technology. So I think it's great. I think it can be a wonderful tool for education. I think it's great for entertainment, right? It's good for a lot of things, but I have so many caution signs on technology.
Yes.
So for me, I can only speak personally, but my kid has a tablet, and I make sure that the the parent controls are on. That I know exactly I limit what he can search and what he can look up. Because all it takes is for him to click on a link or click on something. He has no intention of looking this stuff up, but it just pops up. So
Mhm.
teaching your kids not to click on links,
Yeah.
having
Or
parental
even on
control.
YouTube, sorry to interrupt. Even on
No.
YouTube, I have a friend whose son, very young, was watching a kid show on YouTube,
Mhm.
and the commercial came up and it was pornographic. And
Yeah.
that's for a
Yeah.
kid show. Like,
Yep.
you truly, even if they're watching a kid show, I mean, it's just insane the kind of
Yeah.
stuff that sneaks in, whether
It,
whether it's purposeful or not.
No, but our kids are being targeted, right, by these companies and ads and whatnot, because these corporations don't care about our kids and what they're seeing. They just care about making a dollar, and making
Exactly.
money. And again, it comes back to us. We are the parents. We are the ones that have to monitor these things.
Hmm.
So, I have all these controls on my child settings, and I limit his technology or his screen time. He's only allowed to have it on the weekends, because I've seen just bad things come from it. If I put him in front of a screen for too long, he gets tantrums, he doesn't listen, he talks back
Yes.
more. Just not great behaviors. And
Yeah.
so I have to limit that because it is addicting. We think
Yes.
about us as adults. I can't go anywhere without my cell phone. I'll have a panic attack if I don't know where it is.
Exactly.
Um,
That's
we
it.
can't expect our kids to
Yeah.
monitor themselves.
Who aren't even matured yet or have the emotional regulation. And there is something to be said for being bored. That is
Yep.
such a creative process, and
Yep.
something that really helps the developmental part of our brain when we're kids.
Yeah.
The problem with screens is it's overstimulation
Mhm.
constantly. So they don't understand how to be bored. And sometimes
No.
boredom, even though the initial reaction of it isn't fun, it's
Yeah.
super important for our kids. That's
So
great.
true. So
So
true.
let's shift into the social media specific portion.
Okay.
How do we protect our kids from that? That is a reality in our day and age. And I think
Yeah.
social media can be a good thing if it is very, very, very locked down. And there's no
Yeah.
reason it shouldn't be, because our kids shouldn't be influencers. That should not be an open profile that anyone can see. That needs to be as locked down as it possibly can, which there's a lot you can do to lock it down, to even prevent other external messages from getting to your kids if they're not friends. So tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about social media and how to protect our kids there.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. Having the lockdowns, making sure that all of our uh, profiles are set to private only, that who you're accepting as a friend request, or when you connect with people, don't talk to strangers. I mean, that's the biggest thing I can uh, campaign for is just don't talk to strangers, because people can pretend to be whoever they want to be online, and you don't realize how much personal information you're leaking out, whether it's in photos. One example I use, if you're just taking the first day of school photos, right, and your kids are at the driveway, and you've got that big sign that says my kid is this years old and they're going to this school and their teacher is so and so. That's great for memories, but that should not be posted on Facebook or Instagram or
Mhm.
any social media, because there's people that are predators looking for that information.
Yes. And even if it has like the numerics to your house
Yes.
behind it, I mean, there are searches now, and especially with AI, it's only going to get easier
No,
for
right.
predators.
Yeah. Hmm.
But there are ways that you can search certain things just like that to find similar photos. Like, people don't realize how easy it is with the amount of information we give out freely
Correct.
to find so much out on you and
Yes.
easily where you live,
Yes.
without ever having to purchase anything of it. Like, it's not like you have to go to some special website. No, I can
No,
find a lot for free. And
no.
with that, things like Snapchat, and I think kids have this idea that, oh, Snapchat, it goes away in 10 seconds or whatever it is. I'm not a Snapchatter, but
Yeah.
I
No.
I did a lot of investigation with that kind of stuff, and they think it's gone. It's not gone, guys.
Nope.
Parents, tell your kids, if they take a nude photo and they send it to someone, it does not disappear forever. And all it
Nope.
takes is someone to screenshot it, and then it's on their phone forever too. Tell
Yeah.
me, let's move into the older kid realm a little bit now,
Sure.
because this is a progressive thing that is happening more and more recently, I think, with
Hmm.
online attacks, with social media, specifically sending those
Yep.
kind of pictures to someone that you think you can trust and then you can't.
Nope.
Give me your perspective on that and how we can tell our kids to be smarter.
Don't take nude photographs of yourself, please. Like
Yes.
that is, oh my gosh. I can't tell you how many cases I've had of teenagers. Like some kids have had to move schools because the bullying or the cyberbullying or the threats have become so bad for these kids. They actually have to leave school. But they'll take a nude photograph of themselves, send it to a girlfriend, boyfriend, and like you said, all it takes is one person. It gets sent around the school, and then and then, or you send a photo to somebody you think you can trust, and then they extort you and say, hey, if you don't send me $2,000, I'm going to send this to all your friends, on whatever social media platform.
Yeah.
And it's, and then the kids are scared. So then they try and find money, but then what's to keep that person from doing it again? Just
Right.
call the police. It is a crime. Absolutely. Do not send anybody money. Don't, but I mean, we can avoid that if we just don't take photos of ourselves.
Yeah.
And
And
sending that out.
And let's also talk about the fact that if you are the kid or the
Yep.
adult, obviously, that forwards a photo like
Ooh,
that of a juvenile who's
that,
naked, guys,
yeah,
this isn't a
you won't
joke.
get with no, because then you're in possession of child pornography,
Child
and
pornography, which is a
distributing,
felony.
yeah, and distributing child pornography. So that's 2 charges all in of itself, 2 felonies right there, that you even have it on your phone. And if you forward it to somebody else, yep, that's
Yes.
another charge.
So
Mhm.
if you were to ever receive something like that because of someone bullying and attacking like that,
Yeah.
parents, tell your kids to report that immediately, because even that possession of it being on their phone is technically a crime.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And if you're going to call the police, I mean, my suggestion, just call the police. Do not delete it because it could become evidence. But the police need to see what you saw, what you're talking about, but do not forward it. If you're calling the police aren't going to charge you, right, for having it on your phone, because at that point it's becomes evidence and we need to use it for an investigation. But do not forward that stuff and get it off. Like, don't have it on your phone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think uh, kids sometimes think that they're living in an older life and in a
Yeah.
more of an adult choices, that
Yep.
at the ages that they are and the people that they're interacting with, they are juveniles, and that can just get so messy. I mean, how many reports have we taken where a similar thing like that happened and they're just
Yeah.
young? I mean, our brains aren't even fully formed until we're 25. I mean,
Exactly. And
okay.
kids aren't thinking consequences moving, when they
Hmm.
engage in something, they're not thinking about what could happen. They're just doing spontaneous things. They're being kids.
Trying
But
to be
again,
cool or fit in or whatever else. And they
yeah.
could
And
become
so again,
felons. And what's attached to them if they are arrested and charged and found guilty of those charges? What's going to be attached to them for the rest of their lives?
they're going to have a record.
Yeah, and they're going to be a sex offender.
Oh, for that. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's so knowing those things, right? And we are responsible for our children until they turn 18. That's when they become legal adults. So
Hmm.
I always put it back on the parents. Oftentimes when I would get reports like this, I would say, I would have to do my job and investigate the crime and charge the child if I needed to. But my point in charging the kid isn't to make sure they get jail time. It's to make sure they're getting court mandated services, because these parents oftentimes, sadly enough, aren't engaged in their kids' lives. And if this kid's going to go down a terrible path, I would rather them get services through the court than continue on that path with no consequences to later on become a convicted felon, not be on their juvenile record, be a
Hmm.
sex offender the rest of their life,
Right.
and but we as parents, it is our responsibility to teach our
Yeah.
kids these things.
And it's unfortunate because so much of how kids interpret their world is music and Hollywood, and that's just not the reality. I mean, these kids that, when I left, we were going after all the juveniles that were shooting at everybody and anything because they think it's cool because they heard it in a rap song. And
Yeah.
now they're being charged with felonies, and that will never go away. I
No.
mean, some of them were charged as adults and they are going to be a
Oof.
felon now. And they're
That's
15 or 16 or 17. And it's just like
yeah.
you don't realize that choice now has affected your life forever. Your ability to get jobs, your ability to vote or be on the PTA with your kids one
Yep.
day. I mean, it's really important that we as parents not like fear mongering, but drive home like your choices have consequences and they will change things for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
so with that kind of stuff, did you see more of uh attacks, whether sexual or physical, were the perpetrators more often known or strangers?
Great question. I would say 90% of our cases were known to the child or to the family.
90, you said?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
high. I mean, I'm just ballparking, but I would say
right.
it would be a shock to me if I got a case and it was a stranger, because that just doesn't happen that often.
Hmm.
Um, these are people that we trust. These are people in our homes. These are pastors and teachers and youth counselors. And I mean,
Uncles.
uncles. Yeah, anybody that you can think of are these people. And what's honestly the most terrifying is that these aren't scary people. When you think of
Hmm.
monsters or predators, you think of the guy that lives in the basement who's 40 years old and
Yeah.
doesn't have any social skills, right? These people are the most charismatic, charming, likable people, because when you think about what their power is, it's to persuade children and to win them over. And so they
Absolutely.
aren't scary. They're not scary. And that was the
Yeah.
biggest thing that caught me off guard when I would sit across from these predators. Was like, I'd find myself liking them. I'd
Yeah.
actually want to have a conversation and be like, dang, you
Hmm.
seem like a really great guy. That's what's
Right.
terrifying, because that's
Right.
their power.
That is such a good point. That was always something that was so intriguing to me because it is the everyday guy. It's
Yeah.
the guy that you would say hi to at the store walking
Yeah.
by,
Yeah.
or the lady who smiles at you and you think, "Oh, she seems sweet."
Yeah.
It's very unnerving when you realize how normal they really are.
Yeah. And just look at the news, how many, I've been surprised about how many female teachers are being charged now
Yes.
with, right, having sex with students.
Hmm.
And in your child is in, you're trusting your child to these people. So that's why it just comes down to teaching your kids these rules. And because you
Yes.
can't trust people, just don't trust people.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but there's probably two or three people that I will leave my kids with when I have to go work or something like that. I just, you just don't know, even if you trust that person wholly, you
Yeah,
don't know 100% who else is going to be there. Is a
correct.
neighbor going to come over? Is, your brother-in-law in town or whatever? I
Mhm.
mean, you just don't realize. And even if you're not thinking the physical sexual abuse to
Correct.
that level, but are they going to let your kid watch porn or something
Yeah,
like that, where
right.
it may be a little bit more innocent, but that's still going to affect them and change the way their brain works for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what was, if you could tell parents one thing
Hmm.
that they could do to help protect their kids, what would that thing be?
Um, hmm. I have, so I have kind of, I really like my, I don't analogy. So the three C's is what I call them, right? Be
Yeah.
cautious, over communicate, and build confidence.
Yes. I love
That's
that.
truly what you can do to help your kids out, and just abide by those three C's: caution, communication, and confidence.
Yeah,
That's what
absolutely. And that's with anything with your kids. It doesn't even have to be like
yeah,
physical sexual violence. Like I'm writing
no,
a children's book right now about gun safety and how to communicate with your kids about that. And that is the biggest thing, is the communication and them having a safe place where they can ask questions without
yep,
feeling like they're going to get in trouble, and they can
right.
have that dialogue. And you would be amazed at the things that you could find out just from having a conversation with your kids, that now you're
Hmm.
learning about things that you may not have known before. And you can pick up on little details that make you go, wait a minute, who are you talking to?
Yeah,
And then like behind closed doors, make sure that they're not actually, in danger.
exactly. Yes.
Um, I love that. So the three C's.
Hmm.
What are some things that through your work, some precautions that you've seen parents take or that you wish they would have taken, that that could have made a difference in their child's life or would have? And like, what does that look like? The things that parents can implement today, other than like the
Yeah.
three C's.
Yeah. It's a fine balance in being a parent and your kid's friend. It's a
Right.
balance, right? But I would say you are not your child's friend when I'm talking about older kids. your duty is to protect your kids. And if your kids don't like you, sometimes it's okay if you're keeping them safe. At the end of
Right.
the day. So my biggest suggestion is getting the phones out of the room at night. You're
Yes.
avoiding so much temptation. Your kids need sleep. They need at least minimum 8 hours of sleep. And they're
Hmm.
not going to get that, right? Because they have these literal computers. They have access to everything in the world right there in their room, and nothing's being monitored. So I would say just get the phones out of the room. We have, my husband and I even have a rule where we'll put the phone in the hallway and charge it at night. We don't have a TV in our room. We don't want any
Same.
distractions because, right, a bedroom's just to go to sleep. And so the technology stays outside of our room, but I leave my phone on in case anyone needs me. I can hear the phone ring, but
Right.
get the phones out of the rooms. That's the biggest one.
Yeah. Because remember, it's a
Don't be afraid.
stimulant. So that kid
Mhm.
is not going to think, oh, I'm tired. It's been an hour and a half. I should probably put this down and go to sleep. That's not
No,
how it's going to work. Their brains aren't developed yet.
no, absolutely not. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah.
And knowing where your kids are, that's a big thing. So I'm not going to
Yes.
allow my child to go somewhere, even a birthday party, if I don't have the parents' contact information or know where they're going to be. Um,
Hmm.
know where your kids are at,
Yeah.
and
That's a great one.
talk to them a lot, because like you said, when you open that door to communication, you're going to learn a lot more about your child. um and you could be their safe space where they can feel like they can come to you and not get in trouble,
Yeah.
establish rules with your kids. So my plan, and when my son gets older, hey, if you ever get in trouble and mom and dad are going to be mad at you, we'll have, like, I don't know, key phrase or something, and just say, hey, this is my one ticket. I'm not going to get in trouble, but I need you to come pick me up. I won't ask
Hmm.
questions. I'm just going to be there and come get you, and give them like these freebie tickets where they know they can trust you, and you're not going to harp on them and get them in trouble for
Yeah.
decisions, because like we said,
That's
they
huge.
don't have a developed brain yet, and their kids are going to make
Hmm.
mistakes, get in trouble. But we
Yeah.
can only, I don't know.
It's amazing I'm still alive. I mean, my brain was definitely not developed yet.
It's awesome.
And if
That's
you do have, if your phone does have a kid, maybe they travel for sports all the time, or there is a reason why
Yeah.
they have it, utilize it. That thing will tell you where they are every second
Yep.
of the day if you want it to. And if
Yep.
you're paying for it, that's yours. And so if they don't
True.
want that on, then they don't get the phone. They can
True.
have the tracking, and that can be your ticket to at least knowing where they are. Utilize it
Yeah.
for yourself as well.
Yes. Absolutely.
Good. So one last thing, I forgot to ask it to you in the beginning, but I think it's always cool to hear. What do you think was the most impactful case that you ever worked as a youth crimes detective, and
Yeah.
why?
Okay. So this was towards the end of my time in CAC. It was a little 3-year-old girl, and we got a call about her stepdad abusing her. And long story short, this little 3-year-old girl was living with mom and stepdad and his mother. And she had bruises all over her face. The stepdad would punch her and hit her, and the mom was not protecting. Mom could care less. And it was so impactful to me, because this little girl, when I first saw her, just reached her arms up because she knew that I was a safe person, and
Mm,
held on to me and wouldn't let me go. And I remember being with her. We'd have to do follow-up to take pictures of her bruises, and she's the biggest smile. And you just, like, even with that trauma, she was so happy. And
they're
I got
so
told by,
resilient.
they are. It blew my mind. But she knew that I was a safe person. And so the fact she just hugged me and held me and wouldn't let me go. And it tore me to pieces, because she wasn't going home, and we knew that. We couldn't find any family members. So DSS was going to have to put her into foster care. And I remember being so mad at myself and kicking myself because I wasn't a foster parent. And if I had have been, she could have come home with me that night, is
Mm,
what I thought. So it made a lasting impact because right after that case, I got right into foster care, did all the classes, and we are almost done with our certification on becoming foster parents. And I've kept up with her.
Congratulations. That is so incredible, Jess.
Thank you. Yeah, she's doing good. I don't know what that case just stuck with me, but she's doing good now, and she's with a family member. She's no longer in foster care. And so all is well. So it was had a happy ending.
It really is incredible what these kids can survive and just how resilient they are and that they still have a smile. You
Yeah.
know, like we just as adults we can get so down and so negative and when you see what some of these little kids have gone through and it's just like all they want is to just someone to love them, you know?
That's it. Kids just
It's
want to know they're
amazing.
loved. That's it. That's all kids
Safe
want.
and loved. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can mess up as parents and we will. We're human.
Yeah, of course.
It's going to happen. But
Yeah.
guys, just love and care for them, man. It doesn't take anything brilliant. There is no exact way to do it. You know, just be there. Be there for them.
Yep.
That was a good thing to end on. I'm glad I waited. So, any last words or advice for everyone who's listening as we sum it all up and bring it home?
Now, I mean, my biggest advice is you are the parent. Your kids need you, and you are their biggest supporter and advocate. And like I said, if we're not teaching our children these skills, because our primary role is to teach them to become independent human beings, right? One day, and we want to give them all of the skills and tools necessary to live a fully functional, happy life. So pour into your kids, teach them these things because it is important. And we talked about fear mongering. It's not teaching them to be scared of everything, but
Right.
giving them the proper tools so that they know
Yeah.
how to combat situations because evidently we live in a fallen and broken world, and they are going to encounter things when we can't be around all the time. So we want to give our kids the best chance possible.
Yeah, we're just like with what we teach each other is be aware. Just be
Yes.
aware. There is evil that exists.
Yes.
It is prevalent. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but we have to be aware of it because we have to know what to do if we ever face that kind of evil. So
Absolutely.
you had some incredible advice that even I'm going to start using. I love it. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here, Jess. Thank you everybody for listening. We're going to have her on again soon and we're going to do a specific what did you call it?
Body safety, of course.
Body safety, specific to body safety, which again, I know these kind of topics are harder to listen to, harder to, I don't know, accept that there is this kind of horrible stuff in the world, especially when it involves our kids. But it's about being aware. It's about knowing how to teach our kids to protect and defend themselves. And as hard as it can be, we got to know and we got to be able to have the tools to be able to save our kids and protect them from this kind of crap. So be on the lookout for that coming up soon because that'll be in the next few weeks as well. Thanks, Jess, for being here.
Thanks for having me. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Thanks, guys.